Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this butterfly ladder stitch, very blingy bracelet, using the ladder base and then using crystals to create almost butterfly wings that are encapsulated by pearls. Make sure you watch to the end too, because I give some good hints and tips on finishing off your thread and connecting to the clasp. If you need any supplies, remember they're below the video in the description with a link back to our site. Gather up your materials and let's get started. So to begin the bracelet, we are going to start with ladder stitch. Now, if you're not sure exactly which colors you want to use, I like to use neutrals for the ladder. One thing you want to make sure of is that if you are going to do it in a metallic color, this is what's going to be next to your skin the most. So I would recommend doing a Duracoat or a coated bead that is going to keep its finish and color. I'm going to get one bead out here that isn't included in my project, and that's going to work as the stop bead. Because I'm embellishing on top of the ladder, I don't need to leave a lot of extra thread at the end. I'm using size 6 dragon thread in the black color, and that's smoke color, so that way you can see it a little bit better. If you're using the gold, you can use the golden yellowy tan. Silver, I would use the white for that. You can always use a different color to embellish the top than the bottom. So I've gotten 2 of my strands of thread going through here, and I'm going to be doing this ladder stitch 3 wide. When it comes to ladder stitch, I find that anything more than about 5 wide is too wide and it doesn't really hold well, and you kind of have to do a square stitch. So I have 3 beads that I put on my needle, and they stopped right at the stop beads. That's beads 1, 2, and 3. From here, I'm going to add my next layer of my ladder, the next rung, and that's going to be beads 4, 5, and 6. After I do so, I'm going to go back through beads 1, 2, and 3, making sure I'm not sewing back through that stop bead. Give a nice tight pull on your thread here, pushing it down towards that stop bead, and then sew through beads 4, 5, and 6. Nice tight pull. After 4, 5, and 6, you go 7, 8, 9. They circle around through 4, 5, 6 again. And then back through 7, 8, 9. Coming out of 9, you're going to add 10, 11, 12. Circle back through 7, 8, 9. And then sew through 10, 11, 12. That is your ladder stitch. We're going to do this again, the whole baseline of our bracelet. So you want about 6.5 to 7 inches or more, depending on your wrist size. We also are going to attach the clasp, and then we're going to start to embellish. When you get finished with your base ladder stitch, what I want you to do is finish your last row, and then we're going to go back to the previous row, so the row before, and I want you to go through beads 1 and 2. And we're going to use almost a square stitch style here, going back through then the middle bead from the row we just completed, giving a nice tight pull. What that's going to do is allow us to have a center point to attach our clasp. But I'm using a Clasp Garden Infinite clasp here that I'm going to put my Czech Cabochon in that's going to match. After I come out of that center bead, I'm going to put on my clasp, and then I'm going back through those 2 beads, which is going to put that clasp basically right in the middle. If you want to, you can also put some seed beads on either side to do that. While I have this done, I'm going to then go back through the previous row just to come out another space. I'm going to go back out between there, up through that clasp again, so that way I have more than 1 strand attached, and down through once again. I've got 2 strands there. I'm going to go for a 3rd strand, and then we'll get ready to start our embellishment. Once you're finished putting on your clasp, I want you to add, and coming out the end of your side here, I want you to add an 11-0, a 2mm bicone, and a 15-0 seed bead. Go down to the next layer of your ladder stitch and sew through just that middle bead. That's going to be our first little butterfly wing. From here, do the same thing but backwards. 15, crystal, 11. And now we're sewing through that whole row again, that first row. And that puts our beads coming out through the side here. Now here, by accident, I caught the 11, so you'll want to sew out of that if by any chance you catch the 11, and just kind of hang out right there in the middle. You want to push your beads a little bit towards the middle because we want that central line. You're going to sew through your middle row of beads there, that second line, and we're sewing the whole way through all 3 of those. Once we're through all 3 of those, I want you to drop down to the next row. So this is row 3 that I'm coming out of. And we're going to do the same thing. So on goes an 11, a 2, a 15, and we're going back to that same middle bead from row 2. Sewing through that middle bead here, pulling it up a little bit, and that creates the bottom of our wing. Opposite again, 15, 2, 11, and down through the row of ladder stitch, the 3rd row that your thread was coming out of. This is why I'm calling it a butterfly ladder, because if you look now, when the beads are in place, you almost have those butterfly wings there on the side. From here, we're basically going to keep repeating the pattern. So from here, you're going to leave a little bit of an open space, 11, 2, 15, go down to the next row, and go through that center bead. Come out through that center bead then, and repeat that same rotation. 15, 2, 11, and back through the row previously. Now, here's where we're going to add a little bit of our butterfly, or a body between our butterfly, I should say. After you have that pulled and it's right there nice and in the center, see how you have almost an open gap here? We are going to fill that open gap in the middle here before we go into the next row. The middle open gap we are going to fill with a 15, then a 4mm pearl, then a 15. Go directly over to the opposite side of that ladder stitch row, making sure you're not sewing through any of the seed beads. You're just going through the 8s, and push that to the top of the piece. And that'll lay right over the top there and kind of cover that little butterfly. From here, go down to the next row of your stitch and come out. Center bead there. Go down around. And we're going to repeat. Out the side here. Oops. And we're going to repeat our pattern. So on goes our 11, and your 2 or your 3mm, your 15, and into that center bead from the row above. Once again, 15, crystal, 11, down through that central row. Now, because you're here and you have that central row available, 15, pearl, 15, back through that center row. So you can do a number of different ways, finishing where you add that center bead. As you're coming down through, coming out the side now, you're going to repeat. So repeating on the side is going to look like an 11, the 2, and the 15 through the next center bead of the next row of ladder. Once you're out through there, repeat the same thing in the opposite, 15, bicone, 11, and once again, up to the row before. Keep it all to the top there, and you're going to get those little butterfly wings here that are separated out by a pearl in the middle. Once you're here, sew back through that center row, that's below, back through the next row, and out. Once you're out here, you're doing the butterfly rows again, going towards the middle. So they're always going to be a section where basically those little wings kind of kiss in the middle. And then after the wings kiss in the middle, the next empty one is where you're putting your pearl. So here my wings are in the middle. I'm going back a ladder stitch row to finish it off. And once that ladder stitch row is finished and that 11-0 gold bead is kind of popping towards the top, that's where you're going to do the 15, the 4, the 15. back through the ladder stitch, and out to get ready to do your bicones again. And that's all it is, over and over and over, to get that nice look of those butterfly wings on the sides with the pearls hanging out and really popping to the top with the gold in between. Once you get to the end of your butterfly ladder bracelet here, you can see how pretty and sparkly it is. Flipping it over, you just see a little bit of those 11 O's. And I love that you see the gold peeking through, especially when you put it on your wrist. That little bit of curvature has that gold just peeking through there. You want to make sure when you get to the other end that when you put your clasp on, you put it on face up, meaning that when you close the bracelet, you have that there. Now I'm running out of thread of my embellishment thread, but the nice thing is I made it way too long. So I was able to take a couple rows off. Coming out the end here, we're going to do like we normally did on the other side, taking the thread through, looping around, going back through that end there, back a row, which is where my thread is kind of falling out there, back through here, up and loop around again, getting that starter thread out of there. And then what I'm going to be able to do is take my thread and needle here and go back to the end and add my last row. So it's actually kind of convenient because it's a little bit more stable going in here. Of course, I just need 2 more of my crystals out here for my wings. 11 crystal, 15, back into that center bead, which is where my thread end is. Do the same thing coming out, 15, 2 or 3, and 11. Back through here. Since I'm back through the end, once again, opportunity to go in and reinforce the clasp. Now see how the clasp, that last row, is pulling away a little bit? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to square stitch and tie off my thread. So turning it to the opposite side here, back through the ladder, and see there's my starter thread, back through the ladder here, and I'm going to come out through that second bead or that middle bead and go back down through the middle bead on the row before. I'll kind of link it together. Back 1 more row. You can see I'm just reinforcing, getting rid of my thread. Out the row where I know my thread is ending. Take those 2 thread ends, because I can tuck it to the back and I don't see it at all, and go in, tying those threads off right to the back here with a nice square knot. I still have my needle and thread attached. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle and thread, go back through the next ladder stitch row, and then I'm going to separate out my threads. This is a great way to learn how to do it here. Separate out my thread ends on this side, burn that down, separate out my thread end on this side, and burn that one down. What that does then is it gives the opportunity to not have the thread end kind of coming out both ways. And that finishes off your lovely butterfly bracelet. All I need to do is grab my cabochon, glue it on in there into my infinite clasp. You can even keep it open if you want to, but I'm going to add a nice purple button cab to go along with my purple pearls to finish off my bracelet. Thanks so much for joining me to create this butterfly ladder bracelet. Remember, it's really pretty as a choker as well too. You can do it as a bracelet, or even do a smaller pair as a drop on your huggy earrings here that you can embellish. With this, it's going to be really fun to see all the different colors you make, so make sure to post your version in our Facebook group for Beading and Jewelry Making. As always, need some materials, look below the video. In the description, we'll put links there so that way you can get back to our website and have the full list of all the materials. Don't forget, hit that little subscribe button and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.